Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 298. Greta?
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
Not much. I was kind of shocked to learn that we're closing in on 300.
Yeah, closing in on 300.
I had no idea we were that close.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's super exciting. How are you doing?
The big 300.
300.
As they say.
Yep. Anyway, how are you?
I'm good. I just, man, it's dry around here. We need some rain.
We do.
where
I
live.
just noticed my flowers are very sad. I'm gonna have to water them when we are finished here.
Yeah, the grass is looking pretty awful.
Really, like brown and prickly. It's not good.
Yeah,
not good.
I think they're probably gonna put the old kibosh on the fireworks for 4th of July around here. You know, don't want things to catch on fire.
Oh,
right?
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
Oh, unless we get some heavy rain in the next couple days.
Well,
maybe.
I keep on saying it might happen, so I'm hoping, maybe we'll get some rain here in the next couple days. All right, well, enough of that banter. In this episode, we will be discussing Chapter 19 of the Silmarillion of Beren and Lúthien.
Whoop.
Yes, this
It's
is
only
something.
the best chapter in the
This is
whole book.
something to get excited about. This is. We're going to talk about all of the reasons why. Those of you who have read it know why. Those of you who have not, you're in for a treat. So, very much so.
Yes. And I'm super impressed that we're going to try to knock this out in one episode.
Yeah, well, I think it took us like 2 or 3 the first time we did it,
Yeah, so I guess we're going to keep it kind of high level, but...
Well, and this is supposed to not be, like, the goal here is to just give people an introduction and kind of like help them through some of the finer points.
Sure.
Remember now, there is a book of Beren and Lúthien that exists that we didn't have when we first did this, right?
That's true.
So eventually we will do that whole book on here, and we'll go much more into this story and spend several episodes on this particular story. All of its permutations. There is, in fact, an epic poem of this that Tolkien never completed, but it is still quite epic, called the Lay of Leíthian. And so at some point I would love to spend some time doing that, because there is some poetry in this chapter, some excerpts from that, and they're wonderful. So,
quick question.
Yeah.
The book, Beren and Lúthien, it's still the same story that we have in the Silmarillion, or no?
Well, so the book Beren and Lúthien that came out a few years ago, it's kind of like if you devoted a volume of the history of Middle Earth. Remember that the history of Middle Earth series. If you devoted a volume just to the story of Beren and Lúthien, so it's like kind of like here's different versions of this story and how it evolved over time. I've never read the whole thing.
See.
I have not read the whole thing yet.
Gotcha.
I've just kind of like looked through it, read some interesting parts. But it's it's on my list of things to do. I wanted to redo this Silmarillion read through, which we are, we've only got like 7 or 8 more episodes to go on this thing. And then beyond that, we are going to. There's so much more still to cover. I mean, there's just so much more and so much good stuff. So anyway, like. We'll get there, and there's a lot more that could be said about this. But this version of the story right here, I wrote on our Twitter feed for the Tolkien Road a couple of days ago. I wrote the following. Let's see if I can find it. And now it is my pinned tweet over there. Here we go. If you've ever struggled to read the Silmarillion, start with Chapter 19 of Beren and Lúthien. It is one of the most important Middle-earth legends, and it works by itself. It's Tolkien's genius and heart, and a 1-hour read. You'll thirst for more once you've read it. And lots of people were like, "Yep, what this, start here, right?"
Yeah.
So
it's also a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it's a great image. You can go to my Twitter feed and see it, but it's the image is by an artist who goes by Pete, and it's "Wait for Me Beyond the Western Sea." So.
Oh, I'm like on the verge of tears.
Yeah.
Right now, so just consider yourselves warned.
Man, we haven't even gotten through the.
I know.
We're still on there, barely into the intro.
I know.
All right, well let's cover the introductory matter here, and then we'll dive into all of the details, as many as we can get to.
Sounds good.
So before we get started, we'd like to have a double up air five to our patrons. Get those hands up. 3, 2, 1. Whoopsh. Boom.
Nice.
Special thanks to this episode's executive producers, John R., Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien, Jacob Lockham, John H., and Scotchy Bobo. Thank you all so much, and thanks to all of our patrons.
Absolutely.
Thanks, especially to all those who have been with us for a long time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, we do.
All right, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/TolkienRoad. Doing so gets you cool perks like 20% off of everything at truemythspress.com. Plus, your financial support helps the Tolkien Road to keep on evering on. Learn more at patreon.com/TolkienRoad. YouTube, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and let us know what's on your mind in the comments below. All right, so hey, I mentioned the truemythspress.com there, and we've had my signed books for sale for a little while over there. Both my books, you can get them over there signed. And then we've got the Tolkien Road t-shirt, which you're wearing right now. Yeah.
I'll stand up a little bit.
Stand up and let folks see that.
Let's see.
There you go.
Is
Mm-hmm.
the Tolkien Road.
Yep. So, got some ideas for some more t-shirts that I'm going to be doing. But we just launched another product over there, and it is the Two Trees camper mug. The Two Trees camper mug. So there you go, drinking out of it right now. I think we may have given a sneak preview of this on a previous episode here.
I think maybe on a live stream.
So those are the two trees as depicted on the cover of Tolkien's Requiem, my book about Beren and Lúthien right here. And then it's cool. This mug is great. All right, so it's got on the other side, it's got this quote that I'm about to read from Lord of the Rings. That's Aragorn or Strider talking about the story of Beren and Lúthien, right? Which is kind of cool on a meta level. But if you read Tolkien's Requiem, you'll understand more clearly why I tie Beren and Lúthien to the image of the two trees right here. Just really, really fascinating, symbolism and everything going on there. So in honor of launching this newest product over at truemythspress.com, you can get your Two Trees camper mug for 15% off for the month of July when you use the code Strider. All right, so use the code Strider. You save 15% on this bad boy right here. By the way, if you're a patron, you get an even better discount. So for patrons out there, don't forget you have a 20% off code that you can use. And if you need that, let me know. Hit me up on the patron side. So I'm just telling you, if you're thinking about getting the Two Trees camper mug, you might think about becoming a patron and then getting the Two Trees camper mug, right, with your patron code. So
multiplying the
and then you could go buy my books for 20% off. You can get yourself a T-shirt for 20% off, right? It's a it's a nice deal.
It's a gift that keeps giving.
It is. It's the gift that keeps giving. Mm-hmm. So, but I just love this thing. I love it because when Strider tells the hobbits about the Tale of Tinúviel, they're out in the wilderness, right? They're out in the wilderness, and so I love the idea of a camper mug, And this is this isn't like a normal coffee mug. This is kind of metallic. I guess it's metallic and it's enamel is what they say, but it's I guess that's metallic because it feels metallic.
It's great for really clumsy people like me too, because if you drop it, it won't break.
Yeah, yeah. So the Greta guarantee right
it's
there.
The Greta guarantee. It's Greta proof.
Yes. And water just tastes especially delicious coming out of it. So yeah. All right. Go check that out. truemythspress.com. Hey, and make sure to pay attention to the links, whether you're listening or watching this episode. Lots of good stuff there. I always try to put some good stuff in there, but including ways to listen to both of my books for free. Right? You can listen to both Tolkien's Requiem and Tolkien's Overture for free over on YouTube. You can get them on Audible using one of your credits over there. I've linked to where, and it's actually, either one is a great way to go. The Audible way is obviously commercial free, so that's cool, and you can enjoy those. So, last thing I'll say about these books for now, I am actually. For only this code will be good. I plan to just kind of leave it on for a while, but only those who have listened to this episode will know about this code. All right. So I have created the discount code Finrod for truemythspress.com, and you can get either book or both books for 25% off if you use the code Finrod. So signed copies of both of these, right? Both of them are relevant. This one especially is directly relevant to this story. This one has a whole chapter devoted to the story of Beren and Lúthien and the role that music plays in that story. So anyway, you will like both books. My one thing is, please do get this, but promise me that you will read Beren and Lúthien, chapter 19 of the Silmarillion before you read the story, or at least try to, because my goal, I always want people to try to read Tolkien first before, they read something I've written. So anyway, all right, that's a lot, but I, exciting stuff. So I wanted to go ahead and share it with you. Yeah, this one's I think it's going to be a little bit of a longer episode, but I'm going to try not to make it like a 3-hour episode. But maybe closer to an hour and a half. So buckle in, everybody.
Get comfy.
All right. So the quote of the week. So changing it up a little bit, as I mentioned before, this story is referred to in Lord of the Rings by Strider. So I wanted to start with that. Right. I wanted to start, and it's going to be a little longer because I want to read the whole poem as he recounts it there. It's not a super long poem, but it's it's a little bit longer than what our normal quote of the week are. But remember, what I'm about to read is kind of summarized here on my Two Trees camper mug, right? So get yourself a Two Trees camper mug and then read Beren and Lúthien, and you will just have the full kind of effect going on, All right, here we go. Then tell us some tale. This is from Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 11, Knife in the Dark. Then tell us some other tale of the old days, begged Sam. A tale about the elves before the fading time. I would dearly like to hear more about elves. The dark seems to press round so close. I will tell you the tale of Tinúviel, said Strider. In brief, for it is a long tale of which the end is not known, and there are none now except Elrond, that remember it aright as it was told of old. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, everybody. Greta, you may need to jump in at some point.
Okay. Like now?
Go ahead, yeah.
It is a fair tale, though it is sad, as are all the tales of Middle-earth, and yet it may lift up your hearts. He was silent for some time, and then he began, not to speak, but to chant softly.
So you want to switch off? We can
Sure.
kind of switch off on these stanzas?
Yep.
All right. I wish I had a melody because I would really love to chant this. I was going through it this morning. I was kind of chanting it. I was like, how would he have chanted this? And I know some Gregorian chant, but I don't know that it would have been necessarily a Gregorian chant. But anyway, so all right, I'll start. The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen of stars and shadows shimmering. Tinúviel was dancing there to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair and in her raiment glimmering.
There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves. And where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following.
Enchantment healed his weary feet, that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. Through woven woods and elven home, she lightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely still to roam in the silent forest listening.
He heard there oft the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground, in hidden hollows quavering. Now withered lay the hemlock sheaves, and one by one with sighing sound, whispering fell the beechen leaves in the wintry woodland wavering.
He sought her ever, wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn. By light of moon and ray of star, in frosty heavens shivering. Her mantle glinted in the moon, as on a hilltop high and far, she danced, and at her feet were strewn a mist of silver quivering.
When winter passed, she came again, and her song released the sudden spring, like rising lark and falling rain and melting water bubbling. He saw the elven flowers spring about her feet and healed again. He longed by her to dance and sing upon the grass untroubling.
Again she fled, but swift he came. Tinúviel, Tinúviel. He called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her. Beren came, and doom fell on Tinúviel, that in his arms lay glistening.
As Beren looked into her eyes within the shadows of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies he saw there mirrored shimmering. Tinúviel, the elven fair, immortal maiden, elven wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering.
Long was the way that fate them bore, o'er stony mountains cold and grey, through hills of iron and darkling door, and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more, and long ago they passed away in the forest, singing sorrowless. Yeah, so, little Strider's little summary of the story, and it's worth noting here that Strider is a descendant of Beren and Lúthien. He is a descendant of Beren and Lúthien because he is a descendant of Elros, the first king of Númenor. And of course Elros is descended from Eärendil, who is the believed grandchild or great grandchild of Beren and Lúthien. So, yeah, let me make sure I got that right. Now I always question that because I always get confused by the because Elwing is also the mother of Elros and Elrond. It's like they're both descended. But let's see here if I can find a good image of that.
Might be in the Silmarillion itself. That tree,
no, I know it is. I'm trying
family
to
tree.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Give me one moment.
I think you should just go with your gut. That's what I do.
No, I have to get it right here. So, here we go. All right, Beren, Dior, and then, yes, that's okay. So, it's Elwing who's actually descended from Beren and Lúthien, and she was the mother of Elrond and Elros, right? So it's actually on his mother's side. So not Eärendil. Eärendil is the son of Tuor and Idril, right? And we'll learn more about them and when we learn about the story of the fall of Gondolin. So,
well, good thing you checked.
It is a good thing I checked. Yeah.
Time well spent.
All right. So, I love that passage. It's one of those passages that just makes Lord of the Rings utterly unique. You know, a lot of storytellers wouldn't take the time to show that scene and to be like, here's this poem, here's an excerpt from this poem that I've written elsewhere, and I'm just going to put it in here. But it's one of those things that increases the verisimilitude of the story, right? And it gives this backdrop, right? Just this ancient story. Like, so imagine having read Lord of the Rings, and back when it first came out in the 50s, and like Beren and Lúthien was not even, like, the Silmarillion was not a thing, was not a published thing. Beren and Lúthien was not a published thing, and all you had were these stories, and you're just like where did he come up? Like, you know, he created all these other stories so he could tell this one story, you know, and that's kind of the thing of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love it because this story is truly one of Tolkien's most, I think it's one of the greatest examples of like the Tolkienian thing, like the way he imbues these stories with such incredible darkness, leading to a hope that transcends this world, right? A hope that transcends this world. And that's exactly why he tells it to Sam, right? That's exactly why he tells it to the hobbits. Remember, I believe in this scene, Frodo has been stabbed, right? I believe in this scene, Frodo has been stabbed at this point. It's either this scene or it's shortly thereafter that he does get stabbed, and so they're really in peril at this point. And so Strider tells this story in order to bring in order to bring some comfort to them, right? To lift up their hearts, he says. And for me, this story is just one that lifts up my heart, right? It lifts up my heart every time I read it, and it's one to come back to, to find a hope that transcends this world.
For sure.
All right, so let's dive in. All right, Chapter 19. So Chapter 19 is the story of Beren and Lúthien, a.k.a. the Tale of Tinúviel, a.k.a. the Lay of Leíthian, a.k.a. one of the great tales of the First Age, a.k.a. the Seed of Middle-earth. Simply put, this is one of Tolkien's greatest stories, a story that in many ways informs the entirety of the Middle-earth legendarium. All right, so this story, it's not the very beginning of Middle-earth, but in a way it's the beginning of the stories of Middle-earth, right? All of the stories that come after it kind of branch out from it, touch it somehow, and it touches into those stories somehow, as we've seen here with the Lord of the Rings. It touches into the Hobbit because Elrond is descended from these two figures, right? It touches all of the other stories in the Silmarillion, obviously. It touches the entirety of Númenor, the history of Númenor, right? Just all these different stories, and it brings together a lot of the threads that have been happening so far in the Silmarillion, right? They converge in this story. It's also one of the first big interactions, or big, I guess, scenes where we really get a picture of what Sauron was like, right? Why Sauron, like in Lord of the Rings, Sauron kind of stands in the background as the bad guy, is this potential of what might happen, right? Because he himself is never fully actualized, right? In the Lord of the Rings. However, he's sort of this will that stands in the background as this potential to do more, right? We get a full picture of him in operation directly in this story, and we see just how evil he truly is, right?
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, just again, you should read this story before you listen to this episode. As with each episode, we won't be covering every detail of this chapter, but instead doing our best to hit the high points and unpack interesting and important details. This is a long chapter. It's especially true here. We're not going to hit all the details. We're going to skip over certain parts because Tolkien was okay with abridging things. Just don't deviate. Just don't change what's actually there. It's okay to abridge it. It's not okay to change it.
It's an important
looking at you,
distinction.
Amazon.
I think that is an important distinction, though.
Absolutely, it's an important distinction. It's a very important distinction when it comes to the stories of Tolkien. And all you need to do there is just read his own philosophy on fantasy. It's founded on fairy stories. His remarks on adapting his works to the screen as found in his letters. And you'll understand that he really hates it when people change his stories. When people turn Radagast into an eagle, right? Radagast the wizard into an eagle. For what reason? Those little notes, not a fan. He's okay with abridging. He's like, you don't have to tell the whole thing, but don't change, right? Don't change my stories. All right. So this takes place in the years, according to our War of the Jewels, History of Middle-earth, Volume 11, takes place from the years of the sun 460 to 468.
So 8 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize it spanned that much time.
Well, you think about it, and he's in the wilderness for 4 years.
Well, that's true. That is true.
He's in the wilderness for 4 years at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And he then spends some time in certain other places, and then of course it ends at the very end. There's a certain amount of time that's not entirely clear from the text, but we'll get there. Anyway, it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's read this opening paragraph here. Set the stage. All right, Greta, you want to read that?
Sure. Among the tales of sorrow and of ruin that come down to us from the darkness of those days, there are yet some in which, amid weeping, there is joy, and under the shadow of death, light that endures. And of these histories most fair, still in the ears of the elves, is the tale of Beren and Lúthien. Of their lives was made the Lay of Leíthian, release from bondage, which is the longest, save one, of the songs concerning the world of old. But here the tale is told in fewer words and without song.
Yeah. So this is picking up where the last chapter left off. After the Battle of Sudden Flame, lots of the forces of Morgoth, after the long siege of Angband, have broken out. They've done some serious damage they haven't completely overrun Beleriand, but they've done some serious damage, especially in the northern part of Beleriand, taken a lot of areas, and they did a lot of damage to the forces that were there to keep them at bay. And then this story, it's really important that we understand that it is one of these handful of great tales from the First Age. Tolkien created these tales and then kind of constructed the rest of the details around them for the when it comes to the First Age. So
it's foundational in a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tolkien himself has said that this goes back to like 1916, 1917, when he was in World War I, and he was home, and it was actually seeing Edith dance right in Hemlock Glade. He actually has that image, and that was the image that like kind of inspired Lúthien dancing, right? So this is and I should note, right, I didn't write this down in my notes, but I should tell you guys, if you don't already know, if you go see the gravestone of Tolkien and his wife Edith, it says Beren and Lúthien. That's that's their epitaph, right? Beren, Lúthien. He used those names, and therefore the mythology that those names signify as the epitaphs for their life, right? The one word on each of their lives, right? So you really you read this story, you know the story, and you know the heart of this man, right? You know the heart of this man much more deeply.
Yes, because he put so much of himself into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And enough so that it was a fitting epitaph for him, right? He deemed it a fitting epitaph for himself and his wife.
It's amazing. Yeah.
All right. So it does go back a long way. There was, it's a story that's developed, and we'll go into, when we eventually read the book Beren and Lúthien, we'll go into a lot more of how it developed over the years. There's an epic poem version of this in Volume 3 of the History of Middle-earth. So, it's just one of these stories that has that runs kind of through all of Middle-earth. So after this scene, so we have Barahir and his band of 12 remaining in the region of Dorthonion. All right, so Dorthonion. Where's Dorthonion? Well, Dorthonion is up here, remember, and it used to be called Dorthonion, but now it's called Tarnufuin, and it's right south of the Anfaugalith, which, of course, Angband is kind of up here off the map, up there. So Barahir and his 12 companions are sort of this, like, guerrilla band, right? Guerrilla warfare band that are, they remained up here to do battle with whichever of Morgoth's forces they can find. And it so turns out that Sauron is kind of the lieutenant, Morgoth's lieutenant, that's kind of leading the evil forces, the forces of Angband that are in this area. Sauron is commanded to find and destroy Barahir and his men. And that's not so easy. They're pretty awesome warriors. Not so easy until the unfortunate episode of Gorlim the Unhappy. So Greta, good chunk to read here. You want to start by reading this, and we'll rotate paragraphs.
Now among the companions of Barahir was Gorlim, son of Angrim. His wife was named Eilnil, and their love was great, ere evil befell. But Gorlim, returning from the war upon the marches, found his house plundered and forsaken, and his wife gone. Whether slain or taken, he knew not. Then he fled to Barahir, and of his companions he was the most fierce and desperate. But doubt gnawed his heart, thinking that perhaps Eilnil was not dead. At times he would depart alone and secretly and visit his house that still stood amid the fields and woods he had once possessed. And this became known to the servants of Morgoth.
On a time of autumn he came in the dusk of evening, and drawing near he saw, as he thought, a light at the window, and coming warily he looked within. There he saw Eilnil, and her face was worn with grief and hunger, and it seemed to him that he heard her voice lamenting that he had forsaken her. But even as he cried aloud, the light was blown out in the wind. Wolves howled, and on his shoulders he felt suddenly the heavy bands of Sauron's hunters. Thus Gorlim was ensnared, and taking him to their camp they tormented him, seeking to learn the hidings of Barahir and all his ways, but nothing would Gorlim tell. Then they promised him that he should be released and restored to Eilunel if he would yield, and being at last worn with pain and yearning for his wife, he faltered. Then straightway they brought him into the dreadful presence of Sauron. And Sauron said, I hear now that thou wouldst barter with me. What is thy price?
And Gorlim answered that he should find Eilunel again, and with her be set free, for he thought that Eilunel also had been made captive.
Then Sauron smiled, saying, That is a small price for so great a treachery. So shall it surely be. Say on.
Now Gorlim would have drawn back, but daunted by the eyes of Sauron, he told at last all that he would know. Then Sauron laughed, and he mocked Gorlim, and revealed to him that he had seen only a phantom devised by wizardry to entrap him, for Eilunel was dead. Nonetheless, I will grant thy prayer, said Sauron, and thou shalt go to Eilunel, and be set free of my service. Then he put him cruelly to death.
Yeah, so, big takeaway. Man, Sauron's a jerk.
Totally a jerk. That just seems beyond cruel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like, that's just horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's cruelty that almost feels like just completely irredeemable,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Agreed.
I mean, you must be utterly broken in spirit to do that to somebody else. But yeah, that's what Sauron does. So, it's little glimpses of this that help us understand better why Sauron is so feared and why he's so bad, right?
Yep.
Why he's so evil.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So, unfortunately, Gorlim, by Sauron's treachery, reveals the whereabouts of Barahir, and Sauron's company kills Barahir and all but one of his comrades. And that one comrade is Beren, the son of Barahir, right? So Beren survives, and then he
survives because he's not there.
Right, he survives because he's not there. But he comes upon like kind of the remains of the battle and finds the orcs and slays them all, right? And what does he do? Well, he finds his father's hand, which had been chopped off by one of the orcs, and it has the ring of Barahir, right? The ring of Finrod Felagund, right? Which had been given to Barahir in token of Barahir having saved his life. So he has that. He finds that, but then thereafter he's on his own, right? He's on his own in this cruel, dark, evil land.
Really bad place. Yep.
So Beren wanders 4 years in Dorthonion, eventually flees and heads south. All right. So he spent, in that time, he's pretty feared by all, he's kind of like, he becomes this legend among the those who are dwelling in Dorthonion. For the evil forces, he's this kind of feared, feared entity, right? They don't know what to make of him. He's just always kind of popping up and doing damage to the forces of Morgoth. But after 4 years, man, I picked a bad episode to have a cold on, y'all.
Yeah, you did.
Or at least be getting over a cold. So he wanders south after 4 years. After 4 years in this wilderness, and if you look at the map again, where is south? Well, south from Dorthonion is over the arid Gorgoroth, the Mountains of Terror, and into the region of the Forest of Neldoreth and Doriath, right? Doriath, of course, being the realm of King Thingol and of Queen Melian, of course, are the parents of Lúthien. Now, before he gets there, the arid Gorgoroth, these are the Mountains of Terror, and this is where the descendants of Ungoliant dwell. So not a happy place to have to go over.
No, that's not a fun journey.
Yeah. So
I wonder why he went south. I guess he just got tired of...
There's really no other... I mean, he can't go north, right?
Right, but I mean, why not just stay where he is?
Because at some point, you're just like, I need to get out of here no matter what, right?
Because he's a traveling man.
Well, I mean, it's... Why would... at some point, you're just like, whatever. At this point, it's just so horrible to be here. I'll take my chances, I'll take my chances going through. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it anymore. Like, the quality of living here isn't so good, right?
And plus, you think about the memory, too, maybe...
Yeah.
Knowing that that's where his dad met his end and all that. He probably just needed a fresh start.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it says all that land was now become filled with evil, and all clean things were departing from it. And Beren was pressed so hard that at last he was forced to flee from Dorthonion.
Well, that answers my question.
All right, well let's read about Beren meeting Lúthien. So I might have you go ahead and I might jump in and read a little bit, but then I might have you read some more. So
Okay. Terrible was his southward journey. Sheer were the precipices of arid Gorgoroth, and beneath their feet were shadows that were laid before the rising of the moon. Beyond lay the wilderness of Dungortheb, where the sorcery of Sauron and the power of Melion came together, and horror and madness walked. There spiders of the fell race of Ungoliant abode, spinning their unseen webs in which all living things were snared, and monsters wandered there that were born in the long dark before the sun, hunting silently with many eyes. No food for elves or men was there in that haunted land, but death only. That journey is not accounted least among the great deeds of Beren, but he spoke of it to no one after, lest the horror return into his mind. And none know how he found a way, and so came by paths that no man nor elf else ever dared to tread to the borders of Doriath. And he passed through the mazes that Melion wove about the kingdom of Thingol, even as she had foretold, for a great doom lay upon him. It is told in the Lay of Leíthian that Beren came stumbling into Doriath, grey and bowed as with many years of woe, so great had been the torment of the road. But wandering in the summer in the woods of Neldreth, he came upon Lúthien, daughter of Thingol and Melion, at a time of evening under moonrise, as she danced upon the unfading grass in the glades beside Escalduin. Then all memory of his pain departed from him, and he fell into an enchantment, for Lúthien was the most beautiful of all the children of Ilúvatar. Blue was her raiment as the unclouded heaven, but her eyes were grey as the starlit evening. Her mantle was sown with golden flowers, but her hair was dark as the shadows of twilight, as the light upon the leaves of trees, as the voice of clear waters, as the stars above the mists of the world. Such was her glory and her loveliness, and in her face was a shining light. But she vanished from his sight, and he became dumb, as one that is bound under a spell, and he strayed long in the woods, wild and wary as a beast, seeking for her. In his heart he called her Tinúviel, that signifies nightingale, daughter of twilight, in the grey elven tongue, for he knew no other name for her. And he saw her afar as leaves in the winds of autumn, and in winter as a star upon a hill, but a chain was upon his limbs. There came a time near dawn on the eve of spring, and Lúthien danced upon a green hill, and suddenly she began to sing. Keen, heart-piercing was her song, as the song of the lark that rises from the gates of night and pours its voice among the dying stars, seeing the sun behind the walls of the world. And the song of Lúthien released the bonds of winter, and the frozen waters spoke, and flowers sprang from the cold earth where her feet had passed. Then the spell of silence fell from Beren, and he called to her, crying Tinúviel, and the woods echoed the name. Then she halted in wonder and fled no more, and Beren came to her. But as she looked on him, doom fell upon her, and she loved him. Yet she slipped from his arms and vanished from his sight, even as the day was breaking. Then Beren lay upon the ground in a swoon, as one slain at once by bliss and grief, and he fell into a sleep, as it were, into an abyss of shadow, and waking he was cold as stone, and his heart barren and forsaken. And wandering in mind he groped as one that is stricken with sudden blindness, and seeks with hands to grasp the vanished light. Thus he began the payment of anguish for the fate that was laid on him, and in his fate Lúthien was caught, and being immortal she shared in his mortality, and being free received his chain, and her anguish was greater than any other of the Eldalier has known. Beyond his hope she returned to him, where he sat in darkness, and long ago in the hidden kingdom she laid her hand on his. Thereafter often she came to him, and they went in secret through the woods together from spring to summer, and no others of the children of Ilúvatar have had joy so great, though the time was brief.
Yeah. So, just beautiful little vignette of the meeting of Beren and Lúthien. They fall in love. Beren sees her, calls to her, she hears him, and that he falls for her first, she falls for him. And it's like, well, Thingol, Melion, it's kind of history repeating itself in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, you all kind of fell in love under the twilight, right? And, and now here it happens, right? Now we're going to get into more with Thingol. Actually, we kind of skip over, I'm just kind of skip over some stuff, but let me say a few things about Thingol. So Thingol is not going to be happy when he finds out that this base-born mortal, right, has wants to marry his daughter, right, who is the most beautiful of all the children of Iluvatar. But it's like, Thingol, you are a base-born elf.
Mm-hmm.
You may be immortal, but you're still a base-born elf who deigned to marry a goddess, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
let's put it in perspective here, guys. Yeah, it's really, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's funny. It's almost like he's let that go to his head in a way. He's like, it's a double standard. I also want to comment real quick on this. Obviously this has become a theme. We've talked about it in several different episodes about this whole idea of enchanted love. These like high spells being cast upon people and them falling in love. But this one, and you all know how I feel about some of those stories, but this one I feel like it's fair, it's balanced, because they're both come under an enchantment. It's not just one that's this is more of a fair fight, if you will, in my humble opinion, because they both even Lúthien being immortal is still subject to this enchantment, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I could play devil's advocate there.
I know. You go for it.
Well, I don't want to, because there's so much more to talk about this, and I don't. And really, it would be. I agree with you. Like, it would be kind of hard pressed to play devil's advocate there. And my goal with the other ones was never to play. It's funny. In fact, on the last one, it was like, I don't know what happened there, but but on the one we did on Magdalene with Aol and Arthel, it was like, somehow I think I became the bad guy in that one, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, how did that happen? Anyway, all we're trying to ever do is have interesting conversations and kind of expand our minds and ask, like, well, why is this true over here but not true over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all, that's how you think, like, that's good philosophy. Those are reasonable questions. So and I could ask some of those questions here, and but overall, I mean, I agree with you, and I agree with your assessment for the most part on the other two cases that we talked about as well, right? But this one just seems a lot more pure. It's clear that both of them. Now, I guess the only thing I would say is that Lúthien, obviously, having a little bit of being half goddess, right?
It's kind of a leg up.
She has a leg up on all of this.
That's fair.
So Beren falls for her, but she just utterly. Beren is so broken at this point, and she heals him, right? Like, and it's like and she truly falls for him. So anyway, and we're gonna see, like, one of my favorite things about this story is there's the old, like, people just every once in a while someone wants to be like, oh, Tolkien's like female characters are so weak, like, and it's like, you haven't read much Tolkien, have you? Go read Beren and Lúthien, right? Literally, Beren and Lúthien is a story about the like greatest of all warriors among men and elves, and just a total bad arse, and then it's about how he keeps on getting himself into trouble, and his girlfriend has to come rescue him, right? I mean, it's basically like that's what happens in this story.
Yeah, that's basically what happens.
Right?
Yeah.
And has to use, like, her incredible powers. Don't even get me started on other female characters, but I'm just saying, like, this is a great example of that. Like, it's like Beren is like, it's not like he's a goofball. He's like one of the greatest warriors there are. But in this story, Lúthien has to repeatedly rescue him.
Yes, and knowing how personal this story was to Tolkien, I feel like you can't help but think of the story in light of that truth. Because and I kind of have to chuckle here, just given the whole the mutual enchantment here, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that Tolkien identifies with Beren, right? It's almost like, well, of course he has to make Lúthien fall for Beren, because, like, it can't all be one-sided, right? I mean, it's like I've got to make Lúthien fall for Beren because I'm Beren, like, it's I wonder if it's just a little bit of Tolkien saving face, maybe. It's being like,
well,
it was totally mutual between Edith and me.
Well, I think everything we ever been able to find is that it was, right? That they were.
Oh, for sure.
There's obviously there's been plenty of marriages throughout history where, it wasn't necessarily about love. Mm-hmm. Not in the sense of romantic love, although, that's, anyway, I won't get into that whole issue because I think there's some modernistic sort of misunderstandings there. But anyway, mm-hmm. Let's say the ideal is that two married people, have a decent amount of romantic love for one another, right? And and hopefully a lot of romantic love for one another. And this is I think that Edith and Ronald, as she would have referred to him, both did, right? Mm-hmm.
They both did, and I know that just from.
This is kind of their. I'm sorry. This is kind of their story, right? Like they were both. I don't think either of their families were happy about. They were, he was Catholic, she was Protestant. They were both probably too young. Like it's like they found each other when they were young, and they they were everything to one another, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. They were everything to one another, right? It's like finding that person, like finding your best. Like Tolkien was an orphan. Mm-hmm. She was, I think, an orphan, but she was living with in the same house as Tolkien because they were living with this person, mm-hmm. and it was like finding your best friend and also finding your husband or your soulmate. Soulmate, exactly. That's mm-hmm. the term, right? Like mm-hmm. this is truly like a soulmate story, and that mm-hmm. and because their story was a soulmate story. Right?
Exactly. It's very autobiographical in a way, and just and how you were describing Lúthien as one of the strongest warriors who basically has to keep saving Beren over and over. I mean, that in of itself. I mean, I feel like that's how Tolkien talked about Edith, right? I mean, where would he be without her, right? He was. In a way, I think she probably saved him from mm-hmm. himself more times than not. So
yeah, undoubtedly, and as we both know from being married for many years, like that's what happens a lot of times. Like one of us always seems to be kind of saving the other, and in small ways and occasionally in big ways, right? Mm-hmm. So that's I don't know. That's a beautiful thing about that sort of romantic love and mm-hmm. And ultimately marriage. Mm-hmm. Marriage is what brings us together today. I gotta save my words every time I start talking. My throat gets itchy and I gotta cough. All right, so.
Well, if I have to lead it, you just say the word. I'll do it.
Okay, that sounds. I mean, maybe I'll just you. The more you lead, the better. But anyway,
okay.
So Beren, Lúthien meet, fall in love. Thingol is not happy about this.
He thinks Beren is beneath her, right?
Their love is betrayed to Thingol, and Beren. I'm trying to get us caught up on my little map here, right?
I was just trying to help you during your coughing.
No, fit. You're good. I'm also trying to make sure this doesn't drag out to be 5 hours long. So
you're just gonna have to keep cutting me off then.
No, okay.
Honestly, I could talk forever about this story.
I know, it is fantastic. All right, so their love is betrayed to Thingol, and Beren is arrested. Long story short, Beren wants to marry Lúthien. Thingol won't allow it unless Beren can obtain a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, which Thingol doesn't really think he can do. Beren sets out on his quest, seeks the aid of Finrod first.
I just think a very important note, a very important note here is that Melian counsels him against this. She basically says this is a bad idea.
Counsels Thingol against this.
What did I say?
No, you just said counsels him against this.
Oh, okay, yes. You were clarifying my vague pronoun. Thank you. And it just makes me so mad that Thingol continues to just turn a deaf ear to his wife. By the way, is a Maiar. Yeah. It's just like...
Again, goddess, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, clearly Thingol has like the superiority complex. And it's just really got on my nerves in this chapter. But I digress.
Well, no, I think that very much stands out in this chapter, and that in and of itself, that character flaw being so manifest in this story is also setting the stage for things to come. Mm-hmm. So
for sure.
All right. So let's go back to our map here. So he, like as I said, he sets out on this quest to obtain the Silmaril. And by the way, there's a lot more to what I just went over in a few sentences that happen there. It's all worth reading, but we just can't cover everything in the story in detail right now in one episode. All right, so Beren sets out, and look at this little red line here. So what we see here, this is LordOfTheRingsProject.com, very very cool website, and so he gets to Menegroth, and then he sets out from Menegroth. So this is where he starts out up here, right? Comes down through the Aragorn into Neldoreth, winds up in Menegroth with Thingol, leaves on his quest. And
for Silmaril.
That's right.
Said that right. Yeah.
And he goes south over here. All right, to the Fens of Sirion, to the Falls of Sirion, and then he spots this realm, and meets some of the men of Finrod, or some of the elves of Finrod, I suppose, and winds up convincing Finrod to go on this quest with him, right, to obtain the Silmaril.
Also, sorry, real quick, what do we think about Thingol?
Mm-hmm.
Like basically equating the worth of his daughter to a Silmaril.
You should read my book.
Oh, I think I have.
Have you read? Yeah, Tolkien's
Wait, which
Requiem.
one?
Tolkien's Requiem.
I think I've
I
read
talk about it in there, right?
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't mean to, and that maybe I meant that more as of a rhetorical question for our listeners, because I know we could probably wax poetic on that for a while too.
Yeah.
But
by the way, I would I truly hope that one day we'll get to see, like, I could see them doing a Silmarillion where like a whole series, like a whole season is devoted to this story.
Absolutely,
right?
That would be awesome.
At the very least, I would love to see a film, like a film version of this story.
That would be awesome.
So
not a musical.
No, not a musical. But yeah, so I will also say that since I wrote that book, which is one of the very first things I did, it was kind of when we first started the podcast. I feel like I could rewrite that book, and it would be 3 times as long, because there's so much more to the story than what I have in there. Maybe I will at some point. So anyway, all right. So he sets out. He convinces Finrod to go with him. Let's read a little bit about how that all comes about. So can you read this paragraph right here?
Thus Beren came before King Finrod Felgund, and Felgund knew him, needing no ring to remind him of the kin of Beor and of Barahir. Behind closed doors they sat, and Beren told of the death of Barahir, and of all that had befallen him in Doriath. And he wept, recalling Lúthien and their joy together. But Felgund heard his tale in wonder and disquiet, and he knew that the oath he had sworn was come upon him for his death, as long before he had foretold to Galadriel. He spoke then to Beren in heaviness of heart. It is plain that Thingol desires your death, but it seems that this doom goes beyond his purpose, and that the oath of Feanor is again at work. For the Silmarils are cursed with an oath of hatred, and he that even names them in desire moves a great power from slumber. And the sons of Feanor would lay all the elf kingdoms in ruin, rather than suffer any other than themselves to win or possess the Silmaril, for the oath drives them. And now Celegorm and Curufin are dwelling in my halls. And though I, Finarfin's son, am king, they have won a strong power in the realm, and lead many of their own people. They have shown friendship to me in every need, but I fear that they will show neither love nor mercy to you, if your quest be told. Yet my own oath holds, and thus we are all ensnared.
Yeah, so oaths ensnaring all of these people, right? So the oath of Feanor, Finrod's oath, Thingol makes an oath, right? That if Beren is able to obtain the Silmaril, right? So oaths just abound and going to cause some serious problems. Finrod is right about Celegorm and Curufin. We'll see how that all plays out.
And Finrod's oath was actually to Barahir. Is that right?
Right,
because he owes him his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Finrod and a small company set out with Beren to go north. So they head in this northward direction along the river Narog, and eventually they do wind up after some exploits. They wind up here in our little narrow pass. the rivers, the river Sirion here, and this is where, of course, the what once was Tol Sirion was, and Sauron now has kind of his chief hideout, and Sauron waylays them and does battle with them, and we have our battle of the Songs of Power. I should say also that Finrod agreed to help Beren. Celegorm and Cuarfin were not happy about that, and then Finrod basically laid down his crown and said, "All right, I'm going to make Orodreth, my brother Orodreth, the king of Nargothrond." So here we go. Greta, can you read this battle of the songs? So this says, "Thus befell the contest of Sauron and Felagund, which is renowned. For Felagund strove with Sauron in songs of power, and the power of the king was very great. But Sauron had the mastery, as is told in the Lay of Leíthian." So Greta, can you read this battle of the songs of power?
He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Felagund their swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swayed their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong. The chanting swelled. Felagund fought, and all the magic of might he brought, of Elvenese into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond the western world, on sand of pearls in elven land. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing in Valinor, the red blood flowing beside the sea, where the Noldor slew the foam riders, the stealing drew their white ships, and their white sails from lamplit havens. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee. The ice mutters in the mouths of the sea. The captives sad in Angband mourn. Thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about these songs of power. Finrod ultimately comes out on the losing end of this battle, and what are the things that Sauron, say? So I love it. So Finrod, let's just kind of analyze this briefly. Sauron starts with this song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying, and then
Sauron starts.
Sauron starts like that, and Finrod responds, a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps, all of these images of escape, right? Mm-hmm. Escaping from the darkness. Backwards and forwards their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong, the chanting swelled, Felagund fought. He brought, and that's Elveness, by the way. Elveness. All the magic and might he brought Elveness into his words. Safely in the gloom, they have the birds singing in Nargothrond. And then the gloom gathered, darkness growing in Valinor, the red blood flowing. And what does Sauron sing of? He sings of the kinslaying, right? The kinslaying, and that's what does it. That's what destroys Finrod's will, right? That's what breaks him here. It's the kinslaying. It's the memory of fell deeds done, right? Of the breaking, of the sundering of his peoples, of his brethren. This is, and I think this is important to understand in this story, because one of the themes that that I think we'll find is how do the peoples, the free peoples of Middle Earth, find a way, despite all of the evils of the past that they have done to one another, to come together against their common enemy and to defeat him, right? And to defeat him. And this is a story of how disparate peoples are bound together again, right? Come together and usher in an even more glorious age, right? An even more glorious reality, right? So it ends. This section ends by saying, "Then Sauron stripped from them their disguise." Of course, they've been disguised like orcs, and they stood before him naked and afraid. But though their kinds were revealed, Sauron could not discover their names or their purposes. He cast them therefore into a deep pit, dark and silent, and threatened to slay them cruelly unless one would betray the truth to him. From time to time they saw two eyes kindled in the dark, and a werewolf devoured one of the companions, but none betrayed their lord. So,
some good companions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
loyal.
So again, ensnared, captured Finrod, Beren, and companions, and by the way, I'll just I have my note here because I thought to do this and then came back and did it earlier. But hey, reminder: Finrod. Use code Finrod to get both my books for 25% off at truemisspress.com. Boom! Only episode you'll ever hear that. All right. So Lúthien learns of Beren's imprisonment, goes to his rescue, befriends Huan, the Wolfhound, and assails Tol in Gaurhoth, where Beren is imprisoned and Finrod has just died. All right. So I skipped over a whole lot there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good stuff, very good stuff. Huan, such a great figure. I mean, if this story didn't already have everything, it's got a freaking talking dog in it, right? That's awesome. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That is like that. You're just like, I want that dog. Like, I want that dog to be my dog, right? That would be awesome. So Huan is another great character. We'll talk a little bit about him at one point, but just another fantastic character that we could spend a lot of more time talking about, but won't in this episode. All right. So Lúthien learns of Beren's imprisonment and goes to his rescue at Tol in Gaurhoth.
You make it sound so easy. Like she just like, oh, I'm gonna go save my boyfriend.
Well, it wasn't easy. That was my point. Like, it wasn't easy, but I'm skipping over a lot. All right, but let's read about her rescue. All right, so Greta, here we go.
In that hour, Lúthien came, and standing upon the bridge that led to Sauron's isle, she sang a song that no walls of stone could hinder. Beren heard, and he thought that he dreamed. For the stars shone above him, and in the trees nightingales were singing. And in answer he sang a song of challenge that he had made in praise of the seven stars, the sickle of the Valar that Varda hung above the north as a sign for the fall of Morgoth. Then all strength left him, and he fell down into darkness. But Lúthien heard his answering voice, and she sang then a song of greater power. The wolves howled, and the isle trembled. Sauron stood in the high tower, wrapped in his black thought, but he smiled, hearing her voice, for he knew that it was the daughter of Melion. The fame of the beauty of Lúthien and the wonder of her song had long gone forth from Doriath, and he thought to make her captive and hand her over to the power of Morgoth, for his reward would be great. Therefore he sent a wolf to the bridge, but Huan slew it silently. Still Sauron sent others one by one, and one by one Huan took them by the throat and slew them. Then Sauron sent
Draugluin,
a dread beast, old and evil, lord and sire of the werewolves of Angband. His might was great, and the battle of Huan and Draugluin was long and fierce. Yet at length Draugluin escaped. Let's call him D. Let's call him D.
Draugluin. Yeah.
Yet at length Draugluin escaped, and fleeing back into the tower, he died before Sauron's feet. And as he died, he told his master, Huan is there. Now Sauron knew well, as did all in that land, the fate that was decreed for the Hound of Valinor, and it came into his thought that he himself would accomplish it. Therefore he took upon himself the form of a werewolf, and made himself the mightiest that had yet walked the world, and he came forth to win the passage of the bridge.
I'll read a paragraph.
Great.
So great was the horror of his approach that Huan leaped aside. Then Sauron sprang upon Lúthien, and she swooned before the menace of the fell spirit in his eyes, and the foul vapor of his breath. But even as he came, falling, she cast a fold of her dark cloak before his eyes, and he stumbled, for a fleeting drowsiness came upon him. Then Huan sprang. There befell the battle of Huan and Wolf Sauron. And the wolves and baying echoed in the hills, and the watchers on the walls of Ered Wethrin across the valley heard it afar and were dismayed. But no wizardry nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art, nor beast strength could overthrow Huan of Valinor, and he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. Then Sauron shifted shape from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form, but he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Lúthien came to him, and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said, There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower.
Then Sauron yielded himself, and Lúthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there. And Huan released him, and immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tinúviel and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Then Lúthien stood upon the bridge and declared her power. And the spell was loosed that bound stone to stone, and the gates were thrown down, and the walls opened, and the pits laid bare, and many thralls and captives came forth in wonder and dismay, shielding their eyes against the pale moonlight. For they had lain long in the darkness of Sauron, but Beren came not. Therefore Huan and Lúthien sought him in the isle, and Lúthien found him mourning by Felagund. So deep was his anguish that he lay still, and did not hear her feet. Then, thinking him already dead, she put her arms about him and fell into a dark forgetfulness. But Beren, coming back to the light out of the pits of despair, lifted her up, and they looked again upon one another, and the day rising over the dark hills shone upon them.
Yeah, so pretty awesome rescue scene. Lúthien and Huan work together. I love Lúthien just like owns Sauron. She's just like there, I will send you back to Morgoth, completely stripped of the raiment of your flesh, back like a ghost. Therefore, everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower. And Sauron's like, okay,
sure,
right,
whatever you do.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Now you can see why Sauron hates like all of her descendants so much, right? Like,
she basically made him a fool.
Yeah.
Made him look like a fool.
Yeah. She really just owned him right here. So again, Lúthien, don't even come at me with this business about Tolkien had such weak female characters. Like, just whatever.
And yes, and I want to just say too, just kind of on, I just love this little piece here about how, you know, Lúthien comes upon Beren and thinks he's dead, so she falls into despair, and then Beren comes out of his despair and saves her. It's just like, you know, she saves him and then he saves her. I think I just love like this mutual, you know, this mutual love, and you know, just it just seems very equal. Like they're very equally matched.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And you know, I haven't really dove into this. I mean, we won't dive into this much in this discussion here, but Lúthien has some serious powers. Like, she has some like.
I mean, she beats Sauron, so obviously.
But like, if you kind of dive into it, she's got some pretty fascinating powers. Like this whole, like, I feel like she has this ability to like make people fall asleep. Right.
Well, that was like well, she has like that spell she can cast. Yeah.
Anyway, it's just like interesting powers to me. But
interesting powers.
All right, so yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna mention that's the when she takes control of Sauron's tower, that whole rescue scene has had very much reminded me of like the harrowing of hell.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. When it describes like all of those all the captives coming forward.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just kind of the breaking open of it. Very good stuff.
It is really interesting too, though, to note that Beren didn't come. Like his grief over the death of Finrod was so deep that even, you know, that Lúthien's initial efforts didn't set him free.
So Finrod is dead. Finrod, the great Finrod Felagund, is dead at this point. And let's remember for a moment that he is the brother of Galadriel, right? He is
Finrod
the brother of Galadriel.
And sorry.
Let me finish my point there.
Yes. So,
who do you think really hates Sauron? Galadriel, right? Not a fan of Sauron.
Yeah.
Not a fan of Sauron. So, anyway, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I might be wrong about this, but didn't Finrod die protecting Beren? Like,
I believe
wasn't
so. Yeah.
I think like Sauron's goal, like he sent a werewolf or whatever, he sent him after Beren.
Yeah.
Set Finrod, you know, basically. So he basically is like in a way repaying that debt. right, to Barahir.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Beren and many others rescued, and then we're going to jump past the story of the treachery of Cuirafen and Celegorm. It's also worthwhile to spend time with. We will just briefly speak of Huon's prophecy here, though. But basically, from this point, it's like the next thing is, all right, it's time to go get the Silmaril, right? Like enough messing around, all right, where it's time to go make this happen. So Huon, as we said, he's a hound of Valinor. He's a speaking hound, and he prophesies 3 times in this story. So this is his second prophecy. Then for the second time Huon spoke with words, and he counseled Beren, saying, "From the shadow of death you can no longer save Lúthien, for by her love she is now subject to it. You can turn from your fate and lead her into exile, seeking peace in vain while your life lasts. But if you will not deny your doom, then either Lúthien, being forsaken, must assuredly die alone, or she must with you challenge the fate that lies before you. Hopeless, yet not certain. Further counsel I cannot give, nor may I go further on your road. But my heart forebodes that what you find at the gate I shall myself see. All else is dark to me. Yet it may be that our 3 paths lead back to Doriath, and we may meet before the end." So Huon basically says to Beren, like, look, she's either going to, if you go to Angband, she's going with you, or if you forsake your mission, then you're going to forsake her, right?
Because Beren was trying to get Lúthien to go back home.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. You can turn from your fate and lead her into exile, seeking peace in vain while your life lasts. So, but your doom, right, is to go assail Angband, and she will go with you.
Basically, you're not going to shake her.
Right.
No matter what you do, so you just embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a tough thing, right? He doesn't want to lead, he's trying to win her. He doesn't want to lead her into danger, right? Mm-hmm. So.
But, I mean, the girl has gone to incredible lengths to like continue, like she continues to come after him. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny to me that Beren thinks that he could actually like win that battle with her. Right.
Well, and you wonder too, and again, like Tolkien never like said, you should read this story autobiographically, but we kind of can't help it because he used their names for their epitaphs. And we see the other ways in which we know the other ways in which the stories overlap, but you kind of wonder, like, was this again from his own experience? Like, were there times that we know that there were times that they were like kind of forced to be apart, right? Mm-hmm. And you wonder, was there a time when he was like, Lúthien, or Edith, go, I have to go my own way, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to drag you along with me. And she was like, no, I'm gonna be with you, right? Mm-hmm. And and I'm sure it happened the other way as well, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, a little biographical possibility there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we also learned that Morgoth creates this kind of Huon mockery named Carcharoth to do battle with Huon, right? And this is before the obtaining of the Silmarils. So he does this just in time for Beren, Lúthien, and Huon to arrive in their attempt to obtain the Silmaril from the Iron Crown of Morgoth, right? All right, so let's read about the obtaining of the Silmaril right here.
Then Beren and Lúthien went through the gate and down the labyrinthine stairs, and together wrought the greatest deed that has been dared by elves or men. For they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall, that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. There Beren slunk in wolf's form beneath his throne, and Lúthien was stripped of her disguise by the will of Morgoth, and he bent his gaze upon her. She was not daunted by his eyes, and she named her own name, and offered her service to sing before him after the manner of a minstrel. Then Morgoth, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust, and a design more dark than any that had yet come into his heart since he fled from Valinor. Thus he was beguiled by his own malice, for he watched her, leaving her free for a while, and taking secret pleasure in his thought. Then suddenly she eluded his sight, and out of the shadows began a song of such surpassing loveliness and of such blinding power that he listened perforce, and a blindness came upon him as his eyes roamed to and fro, seeking her. All his court were cast down in slumber, and all the fires faded and were quenched, but the Silmarils and the crown of Morgoth and the crown on Morgoth's head blazed forth suddenly with a radiance of white flame, and the burden of that crown and of the jewels bowed down his head, as though the world were set upon it, laden with a weight of care, of fear, and of desire that even the will of Morgoth could not support. Then Lúthien, catching up her winged robe, sprang into the air, and her voice came dropping down like rain into pools, profound and dark. She cast her cloak before his eyes and set upon him a dream, dark as the outer void where once he walked alone. Suddenly he fell as a hill sliding in avalanche, and hurled like thunder from his throne, lay prone upon the floors of hell. The iron crown rolled echoing from his head. All things were still.
I can read a little bit. As a dead beast, Beren lay upon the ground, but Lúthien touching him with her hand aroused him, and he cast aside the wolf-hame. Then he drew forth the knife Angrist, and from the iron claws that held it he cut a Silmaril. As he closed it in his hand, the radiance welled through his living flesh, and his hand became as a shining lamp. But the jewel suffered his touch and hurt him not. It came then into Beren's mind that he would go beyond his vow, and bear out of Angband all 3 of the jewels of Feanor. But such was not the doom of the Silmarils. The knife Angrist snapped, and a shard of the blade flying smote the cheek of Morgoth. He groaned and stirred, and all the host of Angband moved in sleep. Then terror fell upon Beren and Lúthien, and they fled, heedless and without disguise, desiring only to see the light once more. They were neither hindered nor pursued, but the gate was held against their going out. For Carcharoth had arisen from sleep, and stood now in wrath upon the threshold of Angband. Before they were aware of him, he saw them and sprang upon them as they ran. Go ahead.
Lúthien was spent, and she had not time nor strength to quell the wolf. But Beren strode forth before her, and in his right hand he held aloft the Silmaril. Carcharoth halted, and for a moment was afraid. "Get you gone and fly," cried Beren, "for here is a fire that shall consume you, and all evil things." And he thrust the Silmaril before the eyes of the wolf. But Carcharoth looked upon that holy jewel, and was not daunted, and the devouring spirit within him awoke to sudden fire, and gaping he took suddenly the hand within his jaws, and he bit it off at the wrist. Then swiftly all his inwards were filled with the flame of anguish, and the Silmaril seared his accursed flesh. Howling he fled before them, and the walls of the valley of the gate echoed with the clamor of his torment. So terrible did he become in his madness that all the creatures of Morgoth that abode in that valley, or were upon any of the roads that led thither, fled far away, for he slew all living things that stood in his path, and burst from the north with ruin upon the world. Of all the terrors that came ever into Beleriand ere Angband's fall, the madness of Carcharoth was the most dreadful, for the power of the Silmaril was hidden within him. Now Beren lay in a swoon within the perilous gate, and death drew nigh him, for there was venom on the fangs of the wolf, and Lúthien with her lips drew out the venom, and she put forth her failing power to staunch the hideous wound. But behind her in the depths of Angband the rumor grew of great wrath aroused. The hosts of Morgoth were awakened.
Yeah, so they obtain the Silmaril, they cut it from the Iron Crown of Morgoth. Beren is able to hold it in his hand, right? Apparently because, so we see Beren, the way he's able to hold it in his hand, and then we see that, we know that like Morgoth had burned him when he held the Silmarils, right? And we see here that Carcharoth, when he ingests the Silmaril, it burns him from the inside out, right? So Beren, there's something about the good that can withstand, or that the Silmarils are okay with, and the evil that they're not so okay with, right? That they, and it's kind of like, this idea of, I guess, this idea of holiness, right? So, the divine, or those things which are holy, will not sit well with you if you are evil, right? They will, even though they're intended for good, for your good. If you're an evil thing approaching them, then they will do you harm, right? And so Beren, Lúthien obtained the Silmaril. They almost escape from Angband because Lúthien puts everybody to sleep, and Carcharoth stops them, chomps off Beren's hand, and then is like, "What have I done?" and just runs off, just burning from the inside out.
And there's just that, it's that. What is it called? It says that his, he basically had like this unquenchable thirst, right? The Carcharoth does, and it was just like, it's just this mindset of I want what I want when I want it. And obviously that doesn't always go the way that you want it to.
Nope.
I also thought it was cool that it was actually this knife, Angrist, that had belonged, was it to Celegorm or Corufin? It was one of their knives that Beren got, like in one of those scuffles. We skipped over it.
Yeah.
But basically in that treachery of Corufin and Celegorm, that's how he obtained this knife.
Yep.
Shows that even good can come from, bad situations. Because how else would he have gotten it out? Like, I was kind of wondering that. I'm like, because this knife, it made it a point to say that it would basically, like, cleave iron like it was green wood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a supernatural knife, basically. So it probably may have been one of the only ways they could have gotten the Silmaril out.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have gotten that knife if it hadn't been for that incident with Celegorm and Corufin.
Excellent points.
Thanks.
Excellent points. Beren and Lúthien rescued by eagles, right? So always, when
Love
those moments of eucatastrophe, right? The happy catastrophe, eagles are often present, right? So there we go. The eagles rescue them, and so they journey back, and we learn of Beren delivers, basically says my mission is accomplished, and then he goes to Thingol. And he's like, well, let me see the Silmaril. And he's like, opens his one hand, and it's not there, right? And he's like, it's like, well, I got it, and your daughter can tell you I got it, but...
Well, it's very clever wording.
Yeah.
Right? Because he says that I have it in my hand.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Which doesn't... Or now you would think, oh, yeah, well, the hand that's attached to the arm. But in this case, it's not. So I just found that very clever. It made me chuckle.
But Thingol, his heart is softened somewhat when he realizes this. But really, at this point, they learn in Doriath that this foul beast Karkaroth is filled with the Silmaril, and he's kind of like, he's kind of running through Beleriand, like just destroying all kinds of things. And so they go hunting. They're like, we gotta hunt this thing down. And of course, Huan is still along for the hunt. And that will cause a pretty big battle here between Huan and Karkaroth. So, you want to read this?
Sure. Beren stood beside Thingol, and suddenly they were aware that Huan had left their side. Then a great baying awoke in the thicket, for Huan, becoming impatient and desiring to look upon this wolf, had gone in alone to dislodge him. But Karkaroth avoided him, and bursting from the thorns, leapt suddenly upon Thingol. Swiftly Beren strode before him with a spear, but Karkaroth swept it aside and felled him, biting at his breast. In that moment Huan leaped from the thicket upon the back of the wolf, and they fell together fighting bitterly. And no battle of wolf and hound has been like it, for in the baying of Huan was heard the voice of the horns of Orome and the wrath of the Valar, but in the howls of Karkaroth was the hate of Morgoth and malice crueler than teeth of steel. And the rocks were rent by their clamor and fell from on high and choked the falls of Escalduin. There they fought to the death, but Thingol gave no heed, for he knelt by Beren, seeing that he was sorely hurt. Huan in that hour slew Karkaroth, but there in the woven woods of Doriath, his own doom long spoken was fulfilled, and he was wounded mortally, and the venom of Morgoth entered into him. Then he came, and falling beside Beren, spoke for the third time with words, and he bade Beren farewell before he died. Beren spoke not, but laid his hand upon the head of the hound, and so they parted.
Yes. So we have the death of Huan, just as he's slaying Karkaroth.
And the prophecy was that basically Huan would not die until he was faced with the mightiest wolf in Middle Earth, right?
Yeah.
And that just happened here to be Karkaroth.
They cut open Karkaroth, and they find Beren's hand with the Silmaril. They find Beren's hand is incorrupt, right? Beren's hand is incorrupt. Even
though Karkaroth has basically been burned from the inside out.
Right, and supposedly he would have been digesting, right, the hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's incorrupt. And upon finding the hand, and allowing Beren to touch it, and King Thingol to receive it. Beren says, "Now is the quest achieved, and my doom full wrought," and he spoke no more. And it says, "They bore Beren Camlas, son of Barahir, upon a bier of branches with Huon the wolf-hound at his side, and night fell ere they returned to Menegroth. At the feet of Hiralorn, the great beach, Lúthien met them walking slow, and some bore torches beside the bier. There she set her arms about Beren and kissed him, bidding him await her beyond the western sea, and he looked upon her eyes ere the spirit left him. But the starlight was quenched, and darkness had fallen even upon Lúthien Tinúviel. Thus ended the quest of the Silmaril, but the Lay of Leíthian, released from bondage, does not end."
For the spirit of Beren, at her bidding, tarried in the halls of Mandos, unwilling to leave the world, until Lúthien came to say her last farewell upon the dim shores of the outer sea, whence men that die set out never to return. But the spirit of Lúthien fell down into darkness, and at the last it fled, and her body lay like a flower that is suddenly cut off and lies for a while unwithered on the grass.
So Beren lost. His body goes to the halls of Mandos, which is not normal for the death of a man. And Lúthien, essentially also passes in grief, right? So is that the end of the story? No. Not the end of the story.
So can I ask real quick, why did Beren go to the halls of Mandos? Was it because of his lineage, or because of his love for Lúthien?
It's because at her bidding.
Oh, that's right.
Spirit of Beren at her bidding tarried in the halls of Mandos.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
So it's basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it says the spirit of Beren at her bidding tarried in the halls of Mandos, unwilling to leave the world until Lúthien came to say her last farewell upon the dim shores of the outer sea.
Okay.
So it's almost like, it's almost like, I'm not sure if the halls of Mandos is kind of like if men go there too briefly and then pass out into beyond the world, where because elves go there and that's where they stay, right? It almost sounds like men, but maybe it was just a special grace she was able to obtain for him so that she could see him one more time, right? But she also passes, and she comes to the halls of Mandos, right? And we have this beautiful kind of ending to the story, to this particular chapter. But Lúthien came to the halls of Mandos, where are the appointed places of the Eldalier, beyond the mansions of the west, upon the confines of the world. There those that wait sit in the shadow of their thought. But her beauty was more than their beauty, and her sorrow deeper than their sorrows. And she knelt before Mandos and sang to him.
The song of Lúthien before Mandos was the song most fair that ever in words was woven, and the song most sorrowful that ever the world shall hear. Unchanged, imperishable, it is sung still in Valinor, beyond the hearing of the world, and listening the Valar are grieved. For Lúthien wove two themes of words, of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the two kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, the kingdom of earth amid the innumerable stars. And as she knelt before him, her tears fell upon his feet like rain upon the stones, and Mandos was moved to pity, who never before was so moved, nor has been since.
Therefore he summoned Beren, and even as Lúthien had spoken in the hour of his death, they met again beyond the western sea. But Mandos had no power to withhold the spirits of men that were dead within the confines of the world, after their time of waiting. Nor could he change the fates of the children of Ilúvatar. He went therefore to Manwë, lord of the Valar, who governed the world under the hand of Ilúvatar. And Manwë sought counsel in his inmost thought, where the will of Ilúvatar was revealed.
These were the choices that he gave to Lúthien. Because of her labors and her sorrow, she should be released from Mandos and go to Valimar, there to dwell until the world's end among the Valar, forgetting all griefs that her life had known. Thither Beren could not come, for it was not permitted to the Valar to withhold death from him, which is the gift of Ilúvatar to men. But the other choice was this, that she might return to Middle-earth and take with her Beren, there to dwell again, but without certitude of life or joy. Then she would become mortal, and subject to his second death, even as he, and ere long she would leave the world forever, and her beauty become only a memory and song.
This doom she chose, forsaking the blessed realm, and putting aside all claim to kinship with those that dwell there. that thus whatever grief might lie in wait, the fates of Beren and Lúthien might be joined, and their paths lead together beyond the confines of the world. So it was that alone of the Eldalier she has died indeed, and left the world long ago. Yet in her choice the two kindreds have been joined, and she is the forerunner of many in whom the Eldar see yet, though all the world is changed, the likeness of Lúthien the beloved, whom they have lost. So Lúthien, through all of this, through her song, through her her song obtains new life for Beren and for herself. It is a life that will end, right? So it's not she has this choice, right? She has this choice to make where she can dwell in Valimar, right? She can dwell in an earthly paradise, forgetting all of her grief, but instead she chooses to be with Beren. And
without any guarantees.
Without any guarantees, right? Yeah. Without any guarantees. And this is the, it's interesting to me that she sings this song, right? Two themes of words of the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men, of the two kindreds that were made by Ilúvatar to dwell in Arda, the kingdom of earth amid the innumerable stars. And that's why I connect the image of the two trees, right? The two trees are so deeply connected to this story because, this is the symbolism of the two trees is manifest here, right? That the silver tree is the tree of the elves and the gold tree is the tree of men, right? It's this icon. They are these icons of the blending of the two peoples of Ilúvatar, the two children of Ilúvatar, and we will find that they blend into one people and the descendants of Beren and Lúthien, right? So we have a little more to go in the story of Beren and Lúthien in the next chapter. So, so kind of a little epilogue, if you will. So yeah, that is the story of Beren and Lúthien. Hope you already read it. Hope you'll go read it again many more times. And now so much more about the legendarium if you know this story. And I hope you will pick up my book, Tolkien's Requiem, about it. It will hopefully connect a lot more dots for you as well. And pick up Tolkien's Overture because there's a great chapter in there on the role that music plays in this story. So
it's just woven throughout the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Power of music.
All right. Well, let's do some haiku, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Boom. Oh, where'd mine go? I guess you have to go first.
All right. Wait for you to listen. Uh-oh. Gotta get up. Lost it. Wrote it on a sticky note.
My Post-it blew away.
All right, here we go. Out of the darkness, a song like the brightest star, the nightingale sings.
That's really good.
Thank you.
I like that a lot. All right, here's mine. Radiant, fair, strong, Lúthien Tinúviel, for love forsakes all.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Good stuff.
Thanks.
For love forsakes all. Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Yeah, well, and one thing we should mention, of course, is the tie-in of that story to the story of Aragorn and Arwen, right? Because you obviously have Arwen in the Tinúviel role, Lúthien role, forsaking her immortality to be with him, right? To be with Aragorn, right? So, anyway.
Yeah, good point.
And both of them are descendants of Beren and Lúthien, by the way, right? But just different branches, right? Very different branches. Aragorn through Elros, Arwen through Elrond, right? So, yes. All right. So, let's do some listener haiku here. All right. Yes. So we got one from Dawn J. Silmaril in hand, Beren Thingol accepted, long loved Lúthien. Nice.
Good. I like that.
Nice. Very well done, Dawn. Next up is Michael W. You read this one?
Oh, sure. No greater treasure Beren and Tinúviel bore, Then their son, Dior.
Yes.
Oh.
Little foretaste of the next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Also,
and
it rhymes.
And it does rhyme. Yeah. Bonus points for rhyming the haiku.
Yes.
All right. Red Hawk. Red Hawk sent us 2. They kind of go together, I think, but maybe I'll do the first 3 and then you'll do the second 3 lines.
Sounds good.
Of song, doom was lain, doomed to love, hopeless mission, Silmaril at hand.
Carcarath brings death. Quest in darkness was fulfilled. From death, life of song.
Nice, nice. Well done.
Very, very good.
Excellent haiku, y'all.
Yes, thank
Love
you
them,
guys.
dig them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes or the platform of your choice. Please leave us that 5-star review if you feel that 5 stars pulsing within you. Put a big smile on Greta's face, which is always a good thing. There you go. So, all right. Drop us a line, too, wherever you can find us. Twitter, Facebook, email, all those places. We'll do our best to get back to you. Comments on YouTube, all those good things. All right. Let's see here. Oh, go visit truemisspress.com. Remember, Finrod for both of my books. You get 25% off Finrod. That's only this episode. So you better go do it now or write it down somewhere or you're going to forget and you're never going to get that deal, right? It's a tribute of our dude Finrod. All right. And then get yourself a Two Trees camper mug, right? Two Trees camping mug.
So cool.
Yeah.
I
All right.
want one.
Well, this is mine. You can't have it.
I guess I'll get my own.
All right.
And I'll use that code, so I'll get 20% off.
Boom.
Boom.
Spending my own money on another mug. All right. At least save 20% from myself. All right. So good. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's fair. It's fine.
All right. Good stuff. All right. Hey, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you to our amazing patrons, especially the following: John R.,
Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien,
Jacob Lockham,
John H.,
Scotchy Bobo,
Ms. Anonymous,
Andrew T.,
Red Hawk,
Shannon S.,
Brian O.,
Emilio P.,
Zeke F.,
James A.,
James L.,
Chris L.,
Chuck F.,
Azia V.,
Ish of the Hammer,
Teresa C.,
David of Pints with Jack,
Jonathan D.,
Eric B.,
Johanna T.,
Mike M.,
Robert H.,
Paul D.,
Julia,
Werty,
Matthew W.,
Joe Bigelman,
Chris K.,
Jacob S.,
and Don J.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all so much, and a shout out to those celebrating their Patreon anniversary this month, July of 2022, Werty,
Matthew W.,
Vitin,
David of Pints with Jack.
and Chris L.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. Thanks everybody for listening. We will talk at you next time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.